Insider presents Geek Speak with Matthew Harris and Meredith Lachlan. We cover entertainment, news, and tech with special guest appearances. So sit back and enjoy as we geek out together right now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of Geek Speak, and it's at our regular time. But as you can see, either Meredith grew some really long facial hair, or I've got Rob with me tonight. But we also have Brea Grant. Now, some of you may recognize her from various TV shows. I, of course, recognize her from Dexter. I'm a huge fan of Dexter. Just actually started watching it again not too long ago. But she's with us today because she has a graphic novel coming out tomorrow, and it's called Mary, and it's a little something different. It even got Rob on board with a little horror-esque kind of comics there. But, Brea, why don't you introduce yourself, tell everyone who you are, a little background on yourself, and then tell us about Mary. Something about Mary.
Sure. Yeah, sure. My name is Brea Grant. A lot of people know me from various television shows like Heroes or Dexter or Friday Night Lights. I don't know. And I also write. I write screenplays and I write comic books. And this series comes out, I think it comes out the 4th, but honestly, this has been a crazy week, but I think it's like Sunday. And it's fun, like YA, science fiction, horror stuff.
Gotcha. And I'm sitting here looking through my notes real quick. I thought I had the date right, but now I don't even see the release date.
You know what? Honestly,
you're right. It is the 6th.
It's been a long week, so yeah. I could be totally wrong.
No. You're completely right. It is 10/6. Well, a lot of the times when we get these, it's the day before the launch. And so I probably just confused you with somebody else's launch.
But people can pre-order it right now. You can get online, pre-order it, and it'll arrive at your house on the day after it comes out, or the day it comes out or something.
Yeah, I did see that. It's available for pre-order on Amazon, as well as I'd have to look at the article. Just one quick
all
second.
The places, any place you normally would buy a book, you can buy it. It is a book.
Gotcha. And who is the artist on there real quick? Tell everyone who the artist is.
The artist is Yishan Li, and her art is really great. For me, it feels so the book is about, I can tell you what the book is about, but it's inspired a little bit by Mary Shelley and Mary Shelley's life, but definitely just more of a modern day story about a woman, a girl struggling with what she wants to do with her life. But Yishan's art is very gothic and sort of like manga inspired. And I thought it was a really cool fit for what we ended up doing. Yeah, there it is. It's so cool.
It is. It's beautiful.
Yeah, she did a good job.
Rob, I've done all the talking, sir. Jump in here. You were the one that reviewed the book. And
yeah, it was one of the, look, for a guy who created a sign that says fetish monsters and more, I'm actually not into monster stuff. I'm not really a horror person.
What's up with that sign then? What's up with that sign behind you?
Because I turned my monsters into human beings and gave them genetic disorders. I dealt with the human side and used them as a metaphor because everyone's an expectation of what a monster is. But what if they were just humans and we were misunderstanding them? So it was a very different take on it. I've never been into horror outside of Abbott and Costello when they met the Wolfman and Frankenstein. So going into it, it's one of those things where you want to go in professionally. Even though you don't like it, you like the genre, so to speak, you want to go in it professionally and look, is this a quality book? The art jumps out right away. It's one of those books where, you're starting it off, and every book has that problem where it's got to start and introduce characters. So that's one of the biggest hurdles. And I don't want to give anything away from the book. And in my review, I was very careful not to give anything away because I was so blown away not understanding what it was going to be. I got handed this, said review this, didn't read anything of it, opened it up on a tablet, and just read it from cover to cover. And I was blown away by it. I mean, I know who Mary
Shelley.
Thank you. Is. I of course know that. Like it's not missing on me who that person is. That's my son in the background being crazy, as always. But I knew who she was, but the idea that you came up and forged with, and I love the struggle the character has. It's that moment of growing up, and she has this preordained idea of what her life is supposed to be pushed on her by her family, only to find out there's this whole other like opportunity and possibility. I love the way that you set it up. The pacing of it was actually very well done. The moments where you kind of tip it. If you're a reader of comics, you can see the moment where, wait, that means something else. I know comics. That's a tip to what's coming. So it was masterfully done. You do fall in love with the character. And there's even a point where the character, and I hope this isn't giving too much away, but the character sort of changes their appearance. And that is an important part of what's going on in the story. And that was so well done because I was so into reading it. I wasn't looking at the art like I normally do. So usually on a review, I reread it. And the minute that was pointed out, I was like, I did sort of notice that. And now I went back 5 pages to see where the start came. And I started paying attention to it because I realized it was another layer of storytelling. So I thought it was really well done. Most people can't have that layered story in there and keep it up throughout the whole thing. But from beginning to end, it was just a joy to read. And of course, I reread it for the review, make sure I didn't miss anything. And on the second go, you even pick up a little bit more, which is, again, a credit to your writing skill that you actually were able to hide little things in it that you have to be paying attention. So this is one of those books, not only you're going to enjoy reading it, but you're going to be able to go back over it and actually get something from it on the second reading as well.
Oh, thank you. Wow. That's so nice. And I'm so glad you got a lot from it. I mean, obviously I was trying to tell the story that had this, it has to do somewhat with this historical figure or this writer, but mostly it's about, I think, something we all sort of relate to, which is the struggle to figure out what to do with your life. Right. And like the expectations put upon you. And, obviously the character in this book, she's a descendant of Mary Shelley. She comes from this family where they really expect her to become a writer. And then she discovers that maybe she wasn't so wrong to think that that was not supposed to be her path. And I think we all sort of can identify with that. Maybe you could tell me.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. When I get
there, same, total same. I think this is me working through all of that, like having so many career changes in my life.
And that was one thing I was going to bring up. You have acting credits, of course, we mentioned, but you have producer credits, director credits, and of course, writing credits. And then you've said that you've written a couple of other comics before Mary here. And so you do wear a lot of hats. You're clearly a very talented woman. When did you find that you liked comics or graphic novels and that you wanted to present some storytelling in that medium?
I mean, I got into graphic novels probably later than the average person, or into comic books in general, just because I think like women are not, we're not given them as early. I know my brother started reading them much younger. I didn't really start reading comics until my early 20s. I always stayed interested in them. And then I was on shooting Heroes at the time. And I had a lot of downtime because if you've ever seen the show, I'm in like one scene per episode. So I'd have like all of these days off in a row. And I wanted to try my hand at writing. I tried to write a screenplay with my brother that was just a complete failure because we didn't really know what we were doing. But we were both huge comic fans. And so we came up with a comic idea and we took it out and we pitched it. And we ended up doing a 4-episode miniseries called We Will Bury You. It's like a 1920s zombie story with the IDW, and that was my first series, and it was so fun. I mean, because I get to go make movies and do all sorts of different things. This is like such a different medium, but I like working comics because you can kind of really control the output. Like, whereas in a movie, you're like, I would like to have this many crazy monster characters, and you can't afford it, or it doesn't work out, or it doesn't look the way you want it to look. But with graphic novels, I can go like, actually, I want it to end with a giant Loch Ness monster and this huge panel, and with this, girl flying across the screen, the panel, and screen, and I can actually do that, and so it's kind of a nice thing that I get to do that's not filmmaking.
Very cool. Now, when you first had the idea for Mary, was it always going to be a graphic novel, or what did it start out as?
No, this one started out sort of as a pilot idea, and I was kind of still coming up with it and working it out. And then a friend of mine started working at this comic book company, and he had read my comics in the past and was like, do you have any comic ideas? And I was like, I'm interested in Mary Shelley. I'm interested in her legacy because I think it's like a big shadow for someone to be in. And I have this this comic, this pilot idea, but I could easily turn it into a comic book, and then perhaps it might even be better that way. And he gave me a shot, and then we ended up, 2 years later with a graphic novel. It takes a long time to do a graphic novel.
Yes, it does. And we've been really lucky over the last few months to where here at Geek Insider, we've met a lot of independent writers and graphic novelists and comic book creators. Rob is one of them that we just met. Now it's been like 7 months, but it still just seems like a couple of weeks ago sometimes, because the time has just flown by so fast. And so, of course, we love those kind of creators like yourself that, you're not just pigeonholing yourself into one thing. You stayed creative during the shutdown, but how has that, did you switch when the pandemic hit? Filming stopped. Did you find yourself doing more writing, or were you just kind of on the worldwide pause, as we like to call it?
I have been doing a lot of writing, but I mean, the weird thing about the pandemic is that it didn't change that much for me. I mean, it did change some things. Obviously, I was supposed to be going to a lot of film festivals. I had 2 films in the festival circuit. And one was at South by Southwest and one was at Tribeca, and they both got canceled. So that did change for me, obviously. Oh, my boyfriend is in the background. This is what happens when you are working from home.
We're used to it.
But no, I write every day regardless. So I kind of treat it as this is my day job, is writing. Whether or not I'm getting paid for it, I get up every day and I write. And that's just, I kept doing that through the pandemic. It's harder. It's harder to concentrate for various, news reasons. But yeah, I just kind of kept doing it. And then I was lucky enough to get to go work in Europe last month. So I did get to do a little bit of work during the pandemic. Yeah.
Did you have to quarantine when you got over there?
Yeah. Yeah, not for 2 weeks, because I went to Bulgaria and I think the rules are a little less strict. But I got there and quarantined for a little bit and then got tested. And I was working on a CW show called Pandora that I directed last year. And this year I went back and directed more. And I think it starts airing on Sunday, actually, this new season of it, which is a really fun show. But yeah, it's very different to shoot a show during a pandemic, let me tell you.
Yeah, we've heard, some that are completely shut down, ideas that were boiling over and getting ready to go live. You're now scrapped for the foreseeable future. It's just, and then others like yourself, that it just didn't really slow them down any, either for one reason or another. But Rob, again,
no, I'll be real, it did slow me down a little bit. I don't want to be like completely like,
well, no, I get you. Because it's like I told everybody with myself, I've been practicing for this for 20 years because I've been working from home for 20 years. And when you work from home for yourself, you're on the computer 15 hours a day anyway. And so it did change aspects as far as, I couldn't go to the movies when I wanted to, or out to eat or what have you, but it just didn't change my work life. So I totally got what you meant with that. And Rob, I've been hogging the conversation again. You got any questions for us, sir? Because I got plenty.
Well, I mean, one of the questions I'd have, having read it, what inspired you to actually go with that particular figure? There had to be something that you were like, let me pull on that string. What was that moment?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about Mary Shelley is that we all know her from Frankenstein, right? That's like the thing that comes up. But there's a lot of interesting things about her life. And one thing that inspired me was that she was, she wrote Frankenstein so young. And she also had very famous parents who were both writers. So she kind of lived in this legacy and then created this legacy. And there's just part of me that, when learning more about her, felt like, that idea where you peak in high school? Like, it was like she peaked at 19. Like, she wrote Frankenstein at 19 and then never wrote anything she wrote other things, but nothing that has stayed with us for so long, and was never really recognized for much besides Frankenstein within her lifetime. And so that kind of stuck with me, of this young woman dealing with this thing that she did so early in her life, trying to like keep up with her parents. And I kind of just translated that into a modern day woman who would be dealing with something similar.
Very cool. And Meredith wants to know, which do you prefer more, writing, directing, acting, or other?
Just whatever people are paying me to do at the time. No, I like them all for different reasons. I think at this point in my life, I'm doing a lot more writing and directing. So I'm definitely getting a lot. I get a lot more joy out of those at this point in my life.
Very cool. Very cool. We're going to take a real quick break here, and then we're going to be back with some more with Brea Grant and learn more a little bit about, I keep wanting to say something about Mary, and that's totally different. We're going to learn about Mary, the great granddaughter of Mary Shelley. And so y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back with Brea Grant. Wrong one.
At Geek Insider, we foster relationships with those in the geek sphere so we can give our audience the insider view of entertainment, tech, and more. Check it out! MobileEdge.com has award-winning products with innovative features and contemporary, edgy designs that empower you to look sharp and travel smart with your mobile tech. Your beloved, not to mention expensive gaming gear and mobile tech devices are an extension of you, so give them the protection and style they deserve wherever you go. Find them at MobileEdge.com and protect your tech with Mobile Edge. Bring it on.
Bring it on.
Hey Geek Insiders, Mobile Edge has a special coupon code for our dedicated listeners. Get 25% off your Mobile Edge gear using coupon code GEEK25. That's Geek 25.
I couldn't get rid of it. We got an echo there. Rob, I think you might have done something when you came back in. We were catching an echo.
I don't know. I got kicked out suddenly, so hopefully the echo's gone now.
Yeah, and Meredith disappeared too. So hopefully, Brea, if you do get disconnected, just come right back to the same link. Hopefully there's nothing going on. Usually we don't have issues like this. But I wanted to ask you because I grew up in Fort Worth. I used to be a paramedic in Dallas, and I saw, of course, that you grew up in Marshall. And so do you ever make it back to the area, or you just kind of shun it as much as possible?
No, actually, my boyfriend is from Dallas. He's from, when we started dating, he was still living out in Oak Cliff. So I go back periodically. I go back more to Austin now at this point because I went to school there and a lot of my friends live there. And I have some family out in East Texas still, but my dad moved out here like 8 years ago. So my brother lives out here too. So we kind of like transplanted the immediate family of Marshall to Los Angeles.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. And I actually live down near Austin now. I live in Bastrop, which is just right outside of Austin. And I moved down here 20 years ago, and I just had to because of just how much overgrown Dallas and Fort Worth became. But you went from Little Marshall to LA.
No, I went Little Marshall and I pit stop in Austin. So like I would have, if I had gone from Marshall to LA, I would be dead in the ditch. I would not have made it. It would have been small town girl, like gets completely lost in the valley somewhere and never makes it out. I love Austin though. I go back, I usually go back this time of year for a film festival called Fantastic Fest. That's super fun. And obviously not this year, but.
Yeah, we had planned on attending a lot of the film festivals and of course the Comic Cons, but all of that is on pause. If they had one tomorrow, I don't think I would go at this point just because of everything. It would just be nice to have that option. But again, I don't want to rush things too fast either. But I just seen a lot of people, especially the indie creators, the folks that aren't making the big multi-million-dollar films. A pause like this has put a crimp in a lot of lives. And people don't think about the crews that are they are SAG and all of this. And we're having a indie event, and actually I'm supposed to be speaking with your PR person about this, but in November we're having an event from November 9th through the 13th. It's going to be a kind of a horror Halloween fest, and we're going to have writers and directors. We've got people from Full Moon Features coming, and from Shudder, and I think Bloomhouse we've got somebody coming from. But anyway, so we're wanting to have you there as well. But I totally forget where I was going with that because I got sidetracked. And Meredith is usually here to laugh at me about this time.
I'll be your Meredith.
There you go. Rob, go ahead, buddy. You got something else?
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to ask is, how did you decide on the art style? Picking the right artist is always very important for the story. Was this a before or after effect of the story? Like, was this someone you wanted to work with and you kind of wrote it to work with them?
No, actually, I had written pretty much the full thing, which took me the better part of a year maybe. And my editor asked if I had any artists in mind, and I didn't really. And she sent me a list, and Yishan was on the list. And I just thought her art was, it's so beautiful. I love the clean lines and the, like, it's very simple but really pretty. And I thought that that really matched the sort of gothic tone of what I wanted the feel to be. Like, the heart of it is gothic, even though the story itself is not a gothic story. There's no actual, you know, oh, there's a goth girl in it, but there's no like gothic stuff actually happening within the story. And so I just thought that Yishan's art was just the perfect fit.
Fantastic.
It's certainly. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just commenting. Just go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it is a perfect marriage between. It's very rare that you see that and it not be perceived beforehand, because when I'm writing and I know the artist that's going to be there, I kind of lean into it as a writer, but it also shows the power of your artist, because I think the artist was able to read and just put in these little nuances that were important. Are you a type of writer who thinks the character is more important than the story, or are you the type of writer who thinks the story is more important than characters? Because it's one or the other with writers, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I think for better or for worse, because I started doing everything creative as an actor, I very much start from a character place. So what I tend to do is start with a character and that character's journey, and then kind of move out from there. And that's basically everything I do. So everything ends up being very character based. A lot of times what I do is write an entire script or an entire idea, and then I have to go back and figure out all my story elements, because I know the character's elements, but I haven't quite figured out some of the story elements. So that's a very good question, because I know I get heavy on character and sometimes end up light on story.
And the most important question would be, have you started on the I hope this isn't a huge spoiler, but you leave at a point where there's definitely going to be more story. Have you already started with the more story at this point?
I have not. I have not. I think this is going to be, my publisher is a brand new publisher. They haven't done that many books, and this is their sort of like first run of all of this stuff. And they took a shot on me, so I guess we're going to see how well it goes. And if it goes well enough, then hopefully we'll get to do another book. We've talked about the next books. When I pitched it originally, this first book was actually just the first part of what I thought the first book would be, if that makes sense. So I have more written, like I know where the story goes after this. I just had planned on it being much shorter, and I kind of expanded this to make it the first book.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a person in live chat. They said, Gary said, how many artists did you look at before you did choose the one that you liked?
Not that many. I would say I looked at probably about 10 to 12. And I had some that I liked that weren't available, that I just knew weren't available off the top. Like, there were just people on the list that I was like, oh, I am a fan of hers, but I know she's not available, like things like that. So honestly, my first pick was Yishan. Like, I was very, very fortunate that she was available, and she was, when we looked at it, like, it was like, yeah, she's perfect. And you know, there were some other people on the list that were quite good, but she was just so perfect and happened to be available and ready to go.
And sometimes you just get that feeling when you know it's right. The style just feels right. You know your character, of course, and your storyline better than anyone else, and you just kind of get that feeling in the pit of your chest of this is who's right. This is who can capture it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all gut, right? I mean, I think with anything you can intellectualize it as much as you want, but at the end of the day, we're all sort of relying on our guts when it comes to this artistic stuff. The same when I'm hiring a crew or hiring an actor or anything like that. I'm definitely I go with my gut instinct that this person is right for this job and I think can do it. You know, and obviously you look at what they've done, and, you know, bless artists, I think their job is so hard because they have to constantly be updating and working on their portfolio and making sure they have stuff out there. And yeah, she just happened to have some amazing stuff on her website.
So do you have any ideas for other comics at this point, or you just kind of focusing on, let's see where Mary goes?
I have some other ideas for other comics. Like I said, I write every day, so I end up with a lot of crap in that, but some of it ends up being gold. Some of it ends up being like, I'll throw this away for later in case somebody asks. I very much view writing as sort of like, you go in and you do it every day, whether you like it or not. And you just end up with stuff that sucks, And so I have some stuff that sucks and then some stuff that doesn't work in the medium that I tried to write it in. And I think a lot of that I need to probably work through and maybe could find some comic stuff in it.
Now, a good question for you at this point would be, you've written television scripts, you've written movie scripts. How different was it to switch to the script for an artist for a comic book?
Well, yeah, it's pretty different, right? Because comics, you can't have that much dialogue, whereas film and movie scripts really and TV scripts rely on dialogue. And that's the one thing I always get dinged on when I'm writing comics. My editor is always like, this is way too much dialogue on this page. You have to cut this down, because I want it to be clever and quippy and end up writing entirely too much. But then other parts are very similar because it's all sequential art, right? At the end of the day. So I write it actually in a similar format that I write my film and television scripts. I know other comic artists writers don't necessarily do that, but I write actually even in like a film writing program for my comic books, just because I find it easier and I already know how to work it. And I just sort of try to translate it into more of a comic world. Oh, you're muted.
Matt, you're muted. We can't hear you.
I was saying, Rob, you're up. And then I thought she was telling you you're muted. And then here I am. I'm the one muted because my dog started barking.
Well, I have to ask the question, why not go to crowdfunding? I know this might be a publisher question that you can't answer, but were you part of the conversation? Because, you're looking at Boom Studios. There's now an NFL player who's making a comic book that's on Kickstarter. We've had, of course, the Batman creator, not creator, but the Batman writer, of those who don't know, Scott Snyder, was just on Kickstarter, just got off now with his new tale. So why not take this, build that audience in right away? And still pre-order. The fan base is there. Kickstarter can be an easy platform for pre-order, believe it or not.
Yeah, I've run 3 Kickstarter campaigns. I ran one for the post of my first feature film that I directed about 8 years ago. This was before people were using Kickstarter that much. It was actually we raised about 80 or 90,000 for our movie that we did at the time, just for a post-production. And it was hard doing it. Kickstarter is a tough medium. At the time, obviously, it was very hard because I was educating people on what it was. And then since then, I've run 2 campaigns just for somebody else for a web series. Just because I ran a successful campaign once. If you ever do that, people will try to hire you to do other ones for them, which is, I guess, it's good. Listen, I am an artist who works from job to job. So that was a great job for me for a couple of years. But for this, I think it's just what the publisher wanted to do. They wanted to try to just be a comic book company. They have other books. They've worked in the video game space for quite a long time. So that was sort of their jumping off point as they went from video games to I think some movies and some comic books, and that was sort of the direction that they decided to go.
Gotcha. Now, you said that you spent a year writing Mary, and then it took a couple of years to get it published. How long ago did you have the idea for the story, and do you remember how it came about? Did you just kind of have one of those what if moments, or is this something that kind of fleshed out overnight?
Yeah, it was 2017 when I started, where I was trying to figure this out, and I saw an email I had sent to someone that had the idea in it in 2017, where I was like, what do you think of this idea as like a possible idea for something for me to make? But yeah, was it like just a moment? I think it was for me. Weirdly enough, I've been sort of transitioning my career for a while. So I think there's part of me that is constantly thinking about what it feels like to try to transition your career, try to figure out what you want to do with your life. So there was a little bit of that. And then there's just also that influence of Mary Shelley, like thinking about her as this like titan of science fiction, but maybe how difficult her life was at the time. And what it's sort of like to be a woman in the science fiction horror space, because there are these huge icons, but there aren't actually that many women in that space. Until the last few 10, 20 years, you know?
Right.
And so, or even more recently. And so I think just kind of grappling with all of those things, I sort of combined them into one big monster story.
Rob? You gonna let me keep hogging?
Yeah, no, I can ask away because I love comic books and I love the medium. I want to ask one thing. When you get into the mindset of creating a comic, do you see it differently than you see films? Because this is something that gets talked about a lot, because you've done storyboards and you'll know how different storyboards are from a comic book. So do you find your mind going into different gears, or do you use the camera angles that you've learned on set as a way to also write your comics?
I think it feeds into each other, weirdly. Funnily enough, it's almost the other direction more. It's almost the comics, the like layout of comics and the look of comics feeds into my filmmaking, I find a bit more. I am not a great artist, and I have never done a big enough movie to where I could hire a storyboard artist, but I try to create my own little ideas, and I will draw out things that I want people to do. I just shot like a complicated sequence for this TV show on the CW, and I did draw it out like a comic book. That's what I did. I just drew it out like a comic book. I was like, these are my panels. And I'm doing camera angles, and I'm showing the movement within the panels. But in my head, I think of it like a comic book. So it's, while I know it goes like the direction that you're talking about, for me, it ends up feeding more that comics feed into film than film feeds into comics. Maybe because that was the first thing I wrote was comics. So I kind of learned to write that direction.
I also think that when you're a fan early on, you kind of start to see everything as a comic, and then it's a movie after it's a comic, because there's so much, and I say this all the time, and you did a good job with this, implying the things that happen between the panels. What you're not seeing in the panels is always so important in comic books, and it's almost a lost art with the newer creators, because they don't realize that, especially when we see Hollywood come over to comics. They don't realize how much gets hidden between those panels. But you did an excellent job of implying what was missing from us and setting that up. So it's like, I call it the shadow realm, the story that happens in the shadow realm. So I totally understand what you mean by looking at a movie. I've never done a movie. One day, when I do, I will look at it like a comic book, and I will talk to them in comic book way. I'll probably also have a narrator that does little voice boxes just to keep with it. Now, the women being very powerful, very different women, did you have an inspiration from family as you made these very different women in that family? Because they each one of them come off as these very unique characters that have all come together in this family, and they're bound by family, but they're all very particularly different. So what was the inspiration behind that?
It's a good question. No, I didn't have specific people I was modeling them after. I think I was more modeling them after sort of almost stereotypes, but also just women, the ideas of female writers. So it's like there's three prominent female writers in her life: her mother, who writes mysteries, her grandmother, who writes cookbooks, and her aunt, who does writes like historical books, like does research and writes nonfiction. And for me, those are three. I do a book podcast every week, and we talk a lot about writers, and those are three places where women are really strong as far as writing goes. Like there are a lot of women in those three genres, and maybe less in the nonfiction genre, though I think it's changing quite a bit. But definitely like in the food writing space and in the mystery space, you get to see a lot of these very famous female authors. So for me, it made the most sense that they would be placed there. I did name the grandmother character after my own grandmother, which my mother pointed out to me and said it was just supposed to be like Gigi, like my grandmother. And I was like, no, because I think the mother character in the book is not very likable. The grandmother's pretty likable, but I was like, I love my mother. I get along great with my mother. There's none of my mother in that character, and I didn't want her to think that there might be.
Right. And we're in the private chat over to the side, Brea. If you'll add in your podcast link, we will share it out with everybody as well. Meredith just brought that up.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. Let me see if I can figure out how to do that.
And Meredith brought up another question too. She said, is your graphic novel something that you might see as an animated series in the future, or would you want to see it more of a feature film?
I would like to see it in any way. There's some talk both ways right now, so we will see.
Nice.
But I think I see it more as a series, but don't hold me to that. Like a live action series, but don't hold me to that later.
Gotcha. Well, whenever you do get the information on that, remember, that's inside information. That's Geek Insider. You just put the two together and come on back over it. And really, anytime that you have any projects going on, we always extend this offer out to those that are in the genres and in the geek sphere kind of things that we like. Don't hesitate to reach out or have your PR person reach out to me. We'd love to set something up anytime that you've got something going on, because you're definitely in our wheelhouse, girl. No,
and you're not very far from where I am all the time, by the way. Bastrop. I mean, you're right there. We would be in real life if it wasn't for COVID.
Oh yeah. And I'm actually, hopefully by the end of this year, beginning of next year, I'm going to have an external studio, because I live out in the country. I live between Austin and Bastrop, actually. But I'm going to have an external studio that's where I can be away from the dogs and just have my own little, because I do have a little area here that's fine. As you can see, I got my nerd stuff here, but no, that is a plan, because I'm right down the street from the Hyatt where a lot of filmmakers stay, because Bastrop is a popular filming area location. And I am hoping to be able at some point to start having some interviews out in the office, or the studio, I should say. I got to keep it office. Now, I did have another question for you, and I do this every time. I've completely forgot what it was, and I don't have it written down.
We started talking about Texas, right?
Yeah. Now, am I right in thinking you were in season 5 of Dexter?
I was in season 6.
Season 6. Now,
yeah,
you played the lab assistant, right? That stole the ice truck killer's hand.
Yep, that's me.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Like I said, a huge fan of Dexter. I watch it a lot. And at first I didn't recognize you on your IMDb, but then I saw your picture with the Mary promo and I went, aha, I know who she is now. Now, so of course, I saw that you had some one project, 2020, and great, I ain't got the page up anymore. You had a movie you said that was supposed to play at South by Southwest. What happened with that since South by Southwest didn't happen?
Yeah, I had one movie at South by and one at Tribeca. The one at South by is called Lucky. It's a horror film that I'm in and I wrote, and it's going to Shudder next year. The other one is called 12-Hour Shift, which I wrote and directed. That was supposed to go to Tribeca. It actually comes out on Friday on VOD and in theaters. It is actually playing. I think you'll have some theaters open in Texas. I saw that it was playing a couple theaters there, but it's on VOD for sure. People can see it. It's called 12-Hour Shift, and it's like a horror comedy kind of thing about nurses selling organs on the black market in the 90s.
Oh, wow. Well, that is definitely up our alley. And the Lucky was the one that I had looked up earlier, and that was when I was like, man, is that out? And so you said it'll be on Shudder this coming year, correct? This next year? 2021. And
12-Hour Shift again this weekend. I'm gonna keep plugging it. David Arquette is in it. And Mick Foley is in it. It has a great cast, and it's super fun. So if you're looking for something fun to keep you entertained this weekend, that's a fun one too.
That's on VOD and in theaters, correct?
It's in theaters, but it's it's a weird time for theaters, so it's not playing any theaters in LA. It's playing a drive-in in LA, but listen, you don't have to risk COVID. Go watch it at home, watch it at home. Have your own snacks. That's what I keep saying to people. And as a filmmaker, we actually, if you pay for it on VOD, we actually see some of that money, whereas we don't if it's in the theater. So
oh wow,
we prefer you watch it at home anyway.
Now, see, I wasn't aware of that. And this whole VOD thing with COVID, this is actually was something that I've been saying for years that I thought that the movie studios were missing out on, that we had the technology, you can block people from recording it, and, you know, charging the $20 and you've got 48 hours to watch it, or 2 weeks or whatever the case may be from that platform. What I think that they should do is, if I do it that way, then give me a little discount on the digital purchase of it when it's released for my library. If I buy it for, if I pay $20 just to rent it, then let me pay, $7-8 for it to own it when it comes out on digital, instead of another $20 or $15.
Yeah, I like that. It's a little bit like what they do with vinyl records now. I don't know if you buy much mini vinyl records, but if you buy one, it usually comes with a little thing that says, like, you can download this for free digitally, because you bought the physical copy. You can actually buy you get the album for free. Yeah.
And a lot of them do that with Blu-ray and stuff. There's a lot of them you can go in and get the digital copy of it. But I just know that I would rent more. Like, I haven't watched the new Bill and Ted yet, because I'm not going to pay $20 to rent it when I know I'm going to buy the dang thing too. So
yeah, it's a good point.
But
they'll figure it out.
Yeah, they'll figure it out. Hey, at least we're getting them now to where, of course, they didn't put Black Widow out here for us this summer, but at least we're getting some of them. I loved that The King of Staten Island that came out on demand, and there's been a couple of others that I watched. But Rob, it's your turn, sir.
Now, with the entire comic book industry being in a change flux, does that excite you, looking at it, noticing all these different people suddenly showing up? Is that something you're hearing other, like, creators that you're around talking about? Hey, how hard is it to get into comics, knowing that you've been in comics? Is there, like, almost a trend to try to get into comics now in reverse?
I think there was a few years ago. I will say, like, maybe 5 years ago, I would get emails all the time from filmmakers and people in the film industry saying, like, I want to put out I have an idea for a movie. I want to make a comic first and try to sell it then. And my advice was always, comics is a really non-lucrative hobby for me. It's not, and it takes years. So if you're trying to make your movie in the next 4 years, I don't think it's a good idea, because by the time you sell it, you have an artist, you write it, you have an artist draw it. That's 2 years, where you could have been developing it as a movie if that's like your actual goal. So I discourage it. That trend. But if someone likes comics, I would never discourage them from trying to get into them, because it's very fun. It's a cool medium to get to play in, and, like, I think there are really interesting stories to tell in comics that don't totally make sense for novels or films. There's something in between them, and I think there are definitely good stories there that haven't been told. But yeah, I think the trend has gone away a little bit, if you ask me.
Actually, that's something comic book creators will love to hear, because we did get a lot of Hollywood people coming in.
So many.
And making their comics. Like, I came here to make a comic so I can make a Netflix thing. Here's the script, make it a comic. And it's like, that's not how this works. That's not how this works at all. Your screenplay doesn't play into comic book scripts.
Yeah, and that was the problem, that I felt like a lot of people, that was the entire, there was no, like, love of the art itself, which is a problem. Like, you need to have an understanding of what makes a good book, a good comic book, and a good graphic novel first, because that's why it does translate sometimes great, right? That's why we go and read the graphic novel and you want to make a movie of it. But I think reverse engineering it, you lose the magic, and you are not paying attention to what makes comics special in the first place.
No, I agree completely. And go ahead, Matthew.
I was just going to say, Brea, if you think that it wouldn't be any problem, we can actually play the trailer for 12 hours.
Oh, yeah. Play the trailer for 12 Hour Shift. It's bloody, just so I hope that's cool. It's dark.
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely rated R.
Yeah. Usually when it's my show, we have the little TV MA thing up here at the top.
Okay.
Because I cuss in my sleep. We just can't have kind of a G-rated audience. Meredith, are you going to share a screen and come up, or I'll just wait and see what she's going to do? She just gave me the link. We can keep talking. She's probably going to share a screen, and we'll see her pop in here in a second, and then we'll play it. But Rob, go ahead with another question about comics.
So growing up, what was your favorite comic? You talked about being a fan, so I want to know, what was it that made you a fan of comics? There's always that one comic that just, it breaks your heart when something bad happens. It's something you love, and even now you probably still try to keep up with it.
You know, here's the thing. I didn't start reading comics until I was in my early 20s, which is sort of a bummer because I don't feel like I have that nostalgia. Maybe, I mean, I am almost 40, so maybe I do. And my like gateway comic was The Invisibles, which is kind of a weird one, but has still always stuck with me as something that I feel like it kind of pushes all the buttons for me because it has these, you know, it's a group of people solving mysteries in this sort of like urban fantasy landscape. So I've always been a big fan of that one. And I also read a lot of fables, which I haven't kept up with that well, but I loved fables. And the one I really got into was X Factor. I like, it's such random ones to bring up, but those are.
That's a great one.
As far as like the traditional ones, I know a lot less about them. I think because I didn't grow up reading them, and it feels so daunting to try to get into, like, you know, to try to read Spider-Man, you know, like there's just something about that. And I'll do some of the big ones or the crossovers or things like that. But I tend to read much more indie comics and just way less capes in general. Like I kind of do a lot less of that stuff.
A slice of life is important. I've written things that break the mold of comics myself. But let me ask you about cons. Cons are going to come back. I don't care what anyone says. We'll be back at Comic Cons. Are there any Comic Cons you personally want to be either a guest or set up as selling at this comic? Is there the goal list of things, the different shows you want to go to?
Wow. You know, I only went with my first comic around to various cons, and I do, you know, SCCC every year, like, but usually at this point I go up for like a day, get a hotel room, hang out that day, see my friends who are in comics, and then all of my friends from the film industry call me and I'm like, I don't know, and then I leave. So it's kind of like I'm not actually a very outgoing person. I like our party person, so I usually a day at San Diego is good enough. But I remember really liking New York Comic Con. I remember liking Emerald City. Like there are quite a few that I really enjoyed, but it's been so long since I actually like have done the comics round of things, and I guess I've missed it, which is so weird because I would have been doing it for this book, and I you know, now no one's doing it, so I don't know.
Well, here I actually just uploaded the trailer, so it'll play smoother and the audio will be all on track. And so y'all hang tight, guys. If y'all are listening in on Indie Volt Radio or you're on the podcast, remember you can go to YouTube, look for Geek Insider. We always have our guests on camera as well, and then a lot of the times we'll show images like we did earlier of the comic, and then now we're going to show the trailer from her movie that is coming out this weekend called 12-Hour Shift.
I'm very dizzy. I need to talk to a doctor right away.
I just got here and I'm about to work a double. Someone expired in the ICU. The coroner just left. I have another idea.
Look at you taking initiative.
I like my initiative too. This is good to go.
Is this a joke?
You lost thousands of dollars worth of organs.
If I don't bring him a kidney, I'm dead. I can still get you a kidney. You kept all the organs inside. How dead are you?
Perfect.
Did you pour bleach down that man's throat?
Yeah.
What the hell did you do?
Cops are coming here. I'm gonna tell them who did this. You killed an innocent man for no reason. I'm just gonna have to solve this problem myself.
I'm not leaving till you give me a kidney.
Why would you bring this cousin of yours into this if you knew she would kill people?
I sometimes have too much faith in humanity.
That is what I like about you.
Brea, that looks great, man.
Oh, thanks.
I never thought of Mick Foley as like a tough guy gangster until right now. And I'll never be able to see him the same way. I had him literally sing happy birthday to one of my friends at a convention, and now I'm never going to ask him to do anything like that again because he looks so scary in that moment.
No, he is the nicest. Like, I will say, like, he's definitely playing against type. He came in saying, he read the script and he was like, I don't know if I want to say all these cuss words. And I was like, We'll do some takes without any cuss words. But by the end, he got into the cussing. I think he like started really playing up the bad guy thing. But he's so big and huge, and I just felt like size wise, he could pass as a bad guy. So he just had to pull it off as in his acting, which I think he did.
Well, it looks great, and that's exactly the kind of movies I like. Something strange, new, and then it just the trailer is also, of course, a big part of it because you don't want to. One thing that I hate for a trailer to do is to reveal too much of the movie to where you just don't even feel like you need to go see it anymore. Let's see here.
We have a guest. We have a special guest over here.
Yep,
that's my little guy, Jack. Say hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hey, Jack. And Gary Henderson said it looks great. And I don't know if Meredith was saying yummy about the trailer or is she still eating dinner? But Brea, do you use social media? Is there places people can follow you? I know we put up your podcast earlier. That's definitely one I know Meredith and I will be checking out, both being writers. But is there other places that people can look you up, follow you, and keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm mostly an Instagrammer now these days, doing way more Instagram than anything else. So I'm just my name on there, Brea Grant. I got back on Twitter this week. I've been off for a while, and I'm not on Facebook. I can guarantee I'll be on Twitter for at least one more week. I don't know I can't promise after that. But on Instagram, I try to stay pretty busy, and I post, what I'm reading. I have a lot of foster cats I post, so like I try to keep it fun on there, not just all promotion.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, folks, we've covered a lot of ground with Brea today, but the main thing that we had her here for today is Mary. That's the book that's coming out October 6th. You can order it or pre-order it now on Amazon or wherever you get your books. And this tells the tale of Mary Shelley's great, 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 great granddaughter and how she's coming to terms with being the great, 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 great granddaughter of Mary Shelley and the expectations that are put on her. And
there are monsters. There are monsters.
Yeah, there's monsters. And it's a graphic novel, guys. The artwork is great. I have not had a chance to read it. When we get stuff in like this, Rob and I kind of toss it up in the air on which one of us is going to get it. When it's more of a comic book or the graphic novels, I like Rob to do it just because when I read them, I'm reading them for fun. And I would have just been going, yeah, I liked this part and I liked this part. He does so much more professional review than I do. And so that's why he gets that. But we definitely enjoyed you having you with us. I can't remember your publicist's name off the top of my head, but I'm going to swing around and speak with her about November. We'd love to have you back around then as well, because of course, you're right there with the horror with this thing or the monsters and stuff, not so much horror, but it's still a comic. It's still that thriller type thing. Don't go anywhere. Rob, did you have any final questions for Brea?
No, I mean, I know time is very important. I know we're at the 1 hour mark. I just wanted to congratulate her on a well done project, especially when I start off a book going in like, I'm not going to like this. To win me over because I'm such a stubborn mule really means something. Like I can always appreciate a well told story and the actual ability to do a comic book well, which you nailed. But it was getting me to like it, getting me to the point where I was like, okay, now I'm not just doing this as a review, but I'm actually invested. I like the character. Goth girls just win my heart over so easily, though. I'm a sucker for goth girls, so it was very easy to get me, I think, in the end.
And then you even wanted to know when the sequel's going to be. So.
That's the thing you want to hear from your fan base. Like when you put out a comic and they go, "When's the next issue?" You did something well.
Yeah. Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
Well, we do wish you lots of good luck with the release. Like we said, come back anytime. Hopefully we'll see you again in November. But anytime you've got anything going on, let us know. We're going to cut out of here now. But Brea, don't go anywhere. We want to say bye off the air too, if you've got a minute. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much. And everybody, y'all make sure you tune in tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon at 2 Eastern. Meredith and either Rob or myself is going to be here with Peter Semetti with Alternative Comics. And so make sure you tune in for that. And then Thursday, we are having Josh, I cannot think of his last name off the top of my head, but he is from that Scare Me movie from Shudder. He is the writer, director, and co-star of Scare Me. And so y'all make sure you tune in for that. And if all else, we will see you next Monday night. Take care, everybody. Have a great week.
You've been tuning in to Geek Speak with Matthew Harris and Meredith Loughran, a Geek Insider presentation.
I forgot something. With Meredith not being here, I was in the mode of my show. Brea, there's always one question we ask everybody at the end of this show on Geek Speak, and that is, if you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Let me think. Worry less about boys. I don't know.
Hey, that's probably a good one. I know if my older self would say, hey, dude, quit looking at the girls so much, pay attention to school. And things might have turned out a little bit different. But anyway, so it was Josh Rubin. I was going to say that, but the name just didn't sound right. Josh Rubin from Scare Me is going to be with us Friday, folks. See, this is what happens when Meredith is just hiding away in the back office and she's not here to keep me straight. But anyway, thanks again, Brea, for joining us. Everybody, y'all take care. Have a great week. And don't forget to pick up Mary on October 6th.